am Martha, and I know some people are kind of wondering maybe why we picked Carlos Castaneda, because it's a little bit of a departure from some of the things that we've been doing in the recent past anyway with the INKTANK, the Blueberry Patch INKTANK. And we were asked by the Blueberry Patch, number one, to maybe come up with something that is interesting to a younger generation. We'd been doing classics, something a little bit more modern, and we thought, well, hey, what more modern or what more Blueberry Patch appropriate than Carlos Castaneda? So that's how we came up with that. Institution, right? Okay. And you know, it's something that's always been interesting to me as a kid in high school during the late 70s. It was when I first encountered these books. Read them, fascinated, absolutely fascinated, and followed them for quite some time and have reread them periodically over the years, and actually had to go get new copies because mine are somewhere in a box or have disintegrated from old age. But there were a lot of things that intrigued me about the writing. He has an excellent writing style, and what I liked was that he, in the first books, he's looking at a lost culture or a lost history that there's just a little bit left of, and through his research and data collection for anthropology, he's preserving that. And that was something that appealed to me very much when I was first reading these books. And then he does have an excellent writing style as well. And just looking at my notes here. He was first published in 1968, but he started this research in 1961, I believe. And when I first read it in the late 70s, early 80s, I found it fascinating because of the bits of historical interest. And then I was looking for the spirituality that he seemed to be looking for, and found it inspiring to read this and to see what he was doing. I found a little bit of inspiration spiritually there. For some reason, I don't have any specific reason for it. It just happened that way for me. And the experiences of him as a young anthropologist in the desert, finding this shaman, was it coincidence? Was it non-coincidence? Was it real? Was Don Juan a composite of maybe several different people that he met and did research with? Who knows? I believed it all as it was written at first, and over the years I've looked at it a few different ways. And a hint of the supernatural to it all is an interesting twist, and it's got to make you curious, right? And I encourage everybody to read it because it's non-traditional for sure. But, I have a couple of things marked that I can read. I don't know. When I started looking for selections to read, I was like, well, I like this one and I like that one. And he really has influenced two generations very, very succinctly with the spirituality, and then what he goes into. Two generations of people, and as Ian has said, 28 million? 28 million copies. So somebody's interested, right? And he gets accolades from, spiritual leaders like Deepak Chopra quotes him as one of the most profound and intellectual thinkers, influential of this century. And it makes everybody stop and think when you read this book. So you can take it any way you want. whether it's fiction, whether it's reality. Is it a composition of the two? But it makes you think about stuff, and this is what I kind of love about it. And in the front here, it's the author's commentaries from Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge, and this is just his commentary before the book even starts. It says, the Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge, was first published in 1968. On the occasion of its 30th year of publication, I'd like to make a few clarifications about the work itself and to state some general conclusions about the subject of the book, at which I have arrived after years of serious and consistent effort. The book came as a result of anthropological field work, which I did in the state of Arizona and the state of Sonora, Mexico. While doing graduate work in anthropology department at the University of California at Los Angeles, I happened to meet an old shaman, a Yaqui Indian from the state of Sonora, Mexico. His name was Juan Matiz. I consulted with various professors at the anthropology department about the possibility of doing anthropological field work using the old shaman as a key informant. Every one of those professors tried to dissuade me on the basis of their conviction that before thinking about doing field work, I had to give priority to the required load of academic subjects in general and to the formalities of graduate work, such as written and oral examinations. The professors were absolutely right. It didn't take any persuasion on their part for me to see the logic of their advice. There was, however, one professor, Dr. Clement Mihine, who openly spurred my interest in doing the field work. He is the person to whom I must give full credit for inspiring me to carry out the anthropological research. He was the only one who urged me to immerse myself as deeply as I could into the possibility that had opened up for me. His urging was based on his personal field experiences as an archaeologist. He told me that he had found out through his work that time was of the essence and that there was very little of it left before enormous and complex areas of knowledge attained by cultures in decline would be lost forever under the impact of modern technology and philosophical drives. He put to me as an example the work of some established anthropologists of the turn of the century and the early part of the 20th century, who collected ethnographic data as hurriedly but as methodically as possible on the cultures of the American Indians on the plains and of California. Their haste was justified because in a matter of one generation, the sources of information about most of those native cultures was obliterated, especially among the Indian cultures of California. So, and it goes on a little bit to describe a little bit more, but that's part of what caught me right at the beginning with his work. It's like, wow, this is cool, this is history, this is, and then it goes into more spiritual things, and there's lots of different quotes. What else did I mark down here in its introduction? I don't want to give away the story because it's a really cool story, whether it's truth or fiction. So I just want to entice people to read it if you haven't. But as he gets into his apprenticeship with Don Juan, he describes, for the sorcerers of Don Juan's lineage, however, there is the cognition of modern man and there is the cognition of shamans of ancient Mexico. Don Juan considered these two to be entire worlds of everyday life which were intrinsically different from one another. At a given moment, unbeknownst to me, my task mysteriously shifted from the mere gathering of anthropological data to the internalization of a new cognitive process of the shaman's world. A genuine internalization of such rationales entails a transformation, a different response to the world of everyday life. Shamans found out that the initial thrust of this transformation always occurs as an intellectual allegiance to something that appears to be merely a concept, but which is unsuspectingly powerful undercurrent. This was best described by Don Juan when he said, "The world of everyday life cannot ever be taken as something personal that has power over us, something that could make us or destroy us, because man's battlefield is not in his strife with the world around him. His battlefield is over the horizon, in an area which is unthinkably, for an average man, the area where man ceases to be a man." So those are the introductory parts that I picked out, and it's really cool.
Now, which book is that?
This is the first one, The Teachings of Don Juan,
Okay, yes.
a Yaqui Way to Knowledge. And that's just the introductory part, and it explains how we got into
That's the one I have in mind.
this